Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you today. My name is Jonan Kandwanaho, and I'm the Managing Director at Jonaki Holdings Limited. And at Jonaki Holdings Limited, we offer credit. We are a microfinance institution, and we give loans. We offer credit, so you can check us out at www.jonakiholdings.com to check out our services. So it's a pleasure to have you today, and I always look forward to having you for our business talk. And we usually have this talk every Friday from 5:30 to 6, 30 minutes. And I always emphasize that if you can pick one or two things, then I'll be very glad, because you'll not have wasted your time, and I will not have wasted my time and my data and my efforts. So I always emphasize that just pick one or two things that you can implement, and I'll be happy. The nation will be happy, and the world will be happy. Great. So today we have quite an interesting topic. Now, profitability in bull fattening. Profitability in bull fattening. As our today's topic is quite an interesting one. Now, we've already talked about bull fattening as a business, yes, but why I come out strictly to mention profitability is that some people are doing the business of bull fattening thinking that they are benefiting, they are making profits, and yet they are not. And yet they are not. You can do business thinking that you're making profits, and yet you are not. So this might not apply to bull fattening alone, but almost all other businesses. You may think because there are cash flows, you may think because there are payments coming through, you may think that because you're busy moving up and down, that you're making profits, and yet sometimes you are not. Or in any case, the profits that you're making, if they are there anyway, might be too meager to warrant the time that you commit in and the efforts that you put in. That if someone sat down and analyzed it for you and broke it down, you could say, really? Is this worth my efforts for 6 months that I've been grazing these bulls? Is this worth it with my attention and mind and all the things that I've committed to this business? So at the end of the day, you might ask yourself and realize that the profits that you're making are not worth it. And that's why I come to talk about this profitability thing. Because many times you think you're making money and you're not making money. Cash flow does not mean inflows and outflows does not mean that you're making money. Being busy does not mean that you're making money from the business. So it's important that you sit down and document dot by dot so that you can know how profitable that business is. So I bring it in the angle of bull fattening, but this might apply to any other business as well. And I want to present to you an opportunity. I have some guys that I walk this journey with, that we visit the farm with and sit down, do documentation with. I basically mentor them in this line. So if you're also interested, you can inbox or you can check out the website and express interest. Then you can go through the profitability, real numbers, because numbers don't lie. You might think you're making money, and yet you're not making money. I'll give an example. You might have stocked your bulls at, let's say, 750,000 each or 800,000 each. And then at the end of 6 months or 8 months or 1 year, you sell these bulls at maybe 1.5 or 1.3. In actual sense, and visibly seeing, you have made gross profit of about 600,000, because the difference of 800,000 and 1.5, that's about 700,000. So you could think that you basically have made money. But if you did not sit down to calculate the costs, if you did not sit down to compute including the transport that you put in to check on those bulls in the village. Because I have colleagues who wake up one morning or weekends I have to travel. They almost travel there every weekend. And they're inspecting these projects. They are monitoring these projects. But are you computing in the fuel that you're using to drive to village? Or to drive to whichever place that it is where your boats are at? Have you sat down to compute how much money you use when you go to the restaurant or hotel? You might look at that as small money, but it has an implication on the final profits, the net profits that you make from the business. And it can actually tell you whether the business is feasible or viable or not, if it's profitable or not. Because at the end of the day, all these costs have to be catered for. Because if you don't cater for them, where will they fall? Who caters for them? Because you might walk out of the business thinking that you've made profits. You even call a few friends for a party. You see? You invite Jonan, you invite your colleague, you invite a few guys that, you know, I sold my bulls, so it's now time to party. If I had 20 bulls or 10 bulls, I think with a difference of 500,000, if you stocked at 800 and you've sold at 1.3, you're thinking I've made over 5 million, and not knowing that the details, the costs in there that did not compute are disregarding your business to have made profits. So just like even the Bible says that if you want to build a house, it is important that you sit down and compute the costs, bit by bit, cost by cost, for the materials, for everything, for labor, for roofing, so that you do not stop somewhere and you're stuck. Because if you don't have the end picture in mind, if you don't have the overall cost, the approximate cost that you have in mind, you might not assess whether the money that you have at the moment is enough to help you complete that building or not. And the same applies to that project that I'm talking about. For example, you might wake up one morning and you think you're going to stock like 20 bulls. Just because you have 15 million, you think you're going to. But if you don't assess the market, you might find the bulls, perhaps you stock at a higher price, and yet the numbers get down. And yet, when you're farming or in this kind of project, there are some costs which are constant. I'll give an example. You'll not, unless otherwise, but you'll not increase the salary of the herdsman if the bulls are 15 or 20 or even 10. So meaning that if you have a less number, there are some costs that are constant. You won't pay a herdsman 50,000 just because the bulls that you stocked are 10 of them. Never. It doesn't matter the number. That's a constant cost. Sometimes the land, you hire the land for a given period of time, and the owner of the land might not limit you on the number of bulls you're going to put there. So you might not tell the guy just because you're going to stock 10 bulls and you think he's going to accept your 1 million for 6 months or 1 year. So it's important that you compute cost by cost, including the costs that you incur while on the trip, while on the road to inspect your project, including the airtime that you use to monitor your project, including the charges that you use if you're wiring money to the workers on the farm. And this is what I help with, because I have a tested Excel that I've been using for this particular project. And that's when you can sit at the end of the day and know that from this project, based on the times that I've traveled, based on the times that I've wired money, mobile money, based on the times that the things that I bought, the drugs that I've stocked, this is how much I've made from this project. Until you have the details to the dot, you might be making losses thinking that you're making profits. Because if you don't compute that fuel, you might pick from the budget of your normal errands around town, or your normal errands to work, or you pick from your salary to put in the fuel. And yet it's supposed to be the project that is meant to cater for that. So it's important that you get to the detail, to the core of the matter, especially on the expenditure side. The other bit that is so interesting, and I remember in the previous sharing, the video on YouTube, I told you about the gaps that you need to be alert on in this project of bull fattening. One of the gaps is on the stalking. You might think you're saving on time, you might think you're too busy, but if you're too busy and you don't have a person that is trustable or that is trusted to stock for you, it is important that you first hold your project. Because, as I always say, profits are made at the point of stocking. Profits are made at the point of stocking. The time you're stocking your bulls is when profits are made. And you'll understand that you've made a bad deal or a good deal at the point of stocking or buying the bulls. If you buy the bulls expensively, you're going to graze them for 6 months or for 1 year, and at the end of the day, you're not going to make any margins. Or if you make any margins, they are going to be too meager that they will not warrant the time you committed, the efforts you committed, and your energies. So it's important that you close the dots, the knots where there's some bit of outflow. And one of those areas is the stocking. If you cannot commit time, if you're working formally and you're employed somewhere, apply for leave, go and stock. If you're not experienced, work with someone who has done it to help you with that area. You have to be with that person. You have to monitor him or her. And if you have a trusted person, well and good. But trust is a very, very rare commodity. And if you're to trust someone or bank on someone, you had better trust them. You had better have dealt with them before and proved that actually that person that you're dealing with has integrity and won't fleece you. Apart from that, you're going to stock expensively, buy the bulls expensively, and at the end of the project, you're going to curse yourself why you even joined the project in the first place. You blame Jonan why I advised you to take on the project yourself. So it's important that you maximize on the stocking costs as much as you can. Because if you buy them affordably, if you buy them a little cheaply, then it helps, it increases the gap between the stocking price and the sale price. So that's one of the gaps that you have to bridge. The other gap that you have to bridge is the quality of the bulls. When I say quality, it takes in even the age. Because if you buy 2 young bulls, if they're too young, they can sit on you. You stock the bulls, graze them for 1 year, but nothing is coming through. The bulls are not fattening up. Even when there's pasture, they are not growing. Are you going to pump them? You can't pump them to get bigger. The mistake you made was at the stocking, because you stocked very young bulls. They might take you 2 years to help you break even with your project. So it's important that you analyze the kind of quality and the age of the bulls that you're stocking. I emphasize that if you're stocking, the crossbreeds are better than the local breeds. Local breeds take long to grow, they take long to fatten than the exotic ones. So it's important that you look at the exotic breeds. They grow very fast, they fatten very fast, and at the end of the day, you're going to enjoy the projects. So it's also one of the gaps that you need to look at. Don't stock them young. Don't stock them young. The other key point I want to tell you is that most of the time we go to open markets, open markets. The time they were there before COVID-19 came to hit us. But by God's grace, we are coming up. But then people go to markets. One thing you should note is that by the time someone takes something to the market, he's either in a dire need, and perhaps the animal is good, but sometimes it's because the animal is not good. You ask yourself, the time you're going to sell off your cow, do you look for the best of the best? Do you look for the one that has big size? Do you look for the one that is not as sickly? Do you look for the one that does not? Because if I can give an example, it's only the cows that don't give you good milk that you tend to sell when they fatten. It's only the cows that have 2 teats instead of 4 teats that you tend to sell. It's only cows that have some bit of history of injuries that you tend to sell. So mind you, as you're stocking, know that the person who has brought these bulls in the open market is because there's a reason as why he or she has sold those bulls. So you need to be as experienced, you need to be as critical as you can. It is important that you be as critical as you can so that you don't buy damages. That you don't buy cows or don't buy bulls that are injured and then come and stock them on your farm, and a few days or a few weeks, you're suffering with losses. And you can imagine if you suffer a loss of a bull, that's about 800,000 gone if you stocked at 800,000. And how do you compensate for that? It's a big, big loss. So it's important that you look at that gap as well. It's important that you look at that gap as well. The ones which are young take long to grow. They take long to fatten. So meaning that you have to feed them, you have to give them pasture for quite a while for you to realize the return on investment. The bulls that would have taken 6 months or 5 months, they are going to take you a year or 1.5, and who knows, or even 2 years. And yet you're hiring land. Even if the land is yours, in our Excel, for the guys that I walk this journey with, we compute that land as if you're hiring it, because that's when you can squarely look at that project, whether it's profitable or not. Because ideally, had you not had that land, it would be a cost. So you need to compute it anyway. Let me ask you a question. What if you're managing that project for someone else? Are you going to give them your land free of charge? Another question. What if you're managing that project for an investment club? Because I have some investment clubs that have interest in the project. Are you going not to charge them land, renting the land? You're going to charge them. So more so if you're doing the project yourself, cost the land, even if you own it. Because that's when you can squarely look at the project and assess whether it's profitable or not. Or else, you need to look at the project squarely, independent of you. It has to be looked at as a business. And that's when you can assess its profitability. The other key thing that you need to look at, the advantage that you have is that the bulls don't get as sickly. So they rarely get sick, so you save a bit on the drugs. But also that depends if the land has very many cows or if the land is not fenced. So that means you can confine them. If they are confined, they rarely get sick. Even when they are not, they are a little resilient. So you will save a little bit on the drugs. So it's quite an area that you'll benefit from compared to cows of different categories or cattle that are not necessarily bulls. So that's a plus on the side. So the other key thing that you have to look at is while you're selling. Now, at the point of selling, it is majorly, if you're going to benefit highly, it is a social capital that you have. It is majorly the contacts that you have. Because you might find that whereas you're selling, someone else wants to stock at that level. That whereas you're selling at 1.3, the bulls still have some bit of gap to fatten up, to maybe to grow to 1.8 or 2 million. So someone can actually buy them at that level. So the better the contacts that you have, the better the potentials that you have, the higher the prices or the returns that you can get. And then two, it's important that you do not sell one bull by one. Even if you get broke like how, you might get tempted. And you're like, this COVID has really disorganized me. I don't even have fuel in my car. I think let me just call at the farm. They first kick off one of the bulls. Never sell your bulls one by one. Especially if you're running this thing as a project. Do not help yourself, do yourself a service. Don't sell one bull by one. Otherwise, you're going to incur losses. In selling, there's what we call average, meaning that the bulls that have a smaller size can compensate or can be compensated by the bulls that have bigger size. So meaning that if you have 20 bulls or 15 bulls, you can sell them at an average of 1.5 million. That even if they are small bulls, which could go for 1.2 or 1.3 or even 1 million, you're selling them on average. You have one average that you have looked at, and that's when you can maximize. Now, if you have numbers, that's when you can maximize on the average. That's why it's advisable that after looking through your project, after the period with which you've stocked your project, it is important that you sell off at one go. The other plus with that is that when you sell at one go, it gives you liberty to assess your project, how it performed, and then you can know whether to stock the same number or increase the number. In case you started with 10 bulls, then that's when you can look at, can I increase the number? Because there are some constant costs. Can I increase the number maybe from 10 to 15? If you had stocked 15, can I increase the number from 15 to 20? So that helps you to get off the project or that session of the project and then start another session squarely. So you can imagine if you're selling one by one, how are you going to handle that? You cannot. It will be very hard for you. So it's important that if the time period is done, like 6 months, get them off, stock newly. If the schedule time is done, get them off, stock newly. So don't sell one by one. If you're stuck somehow, see how to maneuver, but don't sell your bulls one by one. The other key pointer, as we almost come to the conclusion, is you could be managing an investment club, you could be managing a circle, you could be managing a group, a small group, because in Uganda it's quite interesting that several small groups, business groups, investment groups have come up. Isn't it a plus? It is a plus. So the groups have come up and they're doing business and it's nice. Groups of young people. So you could be managing other members' money. Now it's important that if you're stewarding other people's resources, including yourself, if you're part of the members, it is important that you do your things very, very well. It is important that you compute your things from the word go. And that's where I come in to help. It is important that you assess the profitability of the project before you start it. Otherwise, apart from people losing trust in you, you might actually have to compensate at a particular point. Because if you incur losses and people entrusted with you with their resources, they might say, we want our money back. Where will you get the money? Will you start selling your land? Will you sell your animals to compensate? Of course, yes. So it's important that, especially if you're managing other people's resources, that you get serious. Assess the profitability of the project before you enter it. And it's one of the virgin and very good areas that you can consider. Because the return on investment might not be as the returns that you realize from the land. I've dealt in land personally, and I know, I'm very, very sure. This I can confirm. The returns that you can get from this project, the returns that you can get from this kind of business, is not anywhere comparable to most of the returns that you get from most of the businesses. And that's why I've tied my knot on this. So if you're managing members' monies, if you have your money, it's important that you assess the profitability before you enter the project. It is very, very, very important. So guys, as our time is running, if you've been thinking about this project, if it has been on your thoughts, it's a nice project. I'd recommend that you go for it. I'd recommend that you consider it. I'd recommend that you take it on. Because the market is there, both nationally and internationally. People will eat meat today, they will eat beef today, tomorrow, and forever. Granted, they are vegetarians. You could even be one of the vegetarians. But I guarantee you, there are people who are not vegetarians, and those are the most. And usually they are willing to pay for those animals. They are willing to pay for that meat. They are willing. One of the times Ochito was saying that, you know, in Nyankore, the bulls are called ente, that you just add S and they become a sente. If I am stuck, like now, I just make a call and I say I'm writing off 10 bulls or 20 bulls. And cash, hard cash, right there. Now, for the plantain or for matoke, for anything else, you might not cut it prematurely. You might not sell it off and you get cash right there because it can ripen up. But for animals or for bulls specifically, you can liquidate them anytime you want your money. And you can rarely, if you stocked very well, you can rarely go wrong. You can rarely sell at a lower price. You can rarely make a loss. So it's one of the ventures that I'm really proud of, that I really like, and that's why I have passion to come here and share with you. Like it says in Proverbs, iron sharpens iron. I would like you to learn one or two things and go and implement. Share with your colleagues, share with your family, share with your clubs, or associations or circles, and we all shall be good. So I thank you so much for attending today's session. I thank you so much for making your time. I wish you the very, very best of the Friday and the rest of the weekend. God richly bless you. Bye-bye.